of the time allowed. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as is customary, let's please ask you to honour the host nation of this international competition by asking you to stand, if you're able, for the playing of the national anthem of the United States of America.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, here we are, start of another great competition at the Great Lakes Equestrian Festival. This is, of course, third week of the summer series of events here, and the Groove Family Large Tour two-phase event about to commence with Nicolette Hurt showing the way here first. She is going to be aboard SIEC Larissa, a 10-year-old Oldenburg mount by Lavello. And as you're going to see here, riders are going to compete over the initial phase, which goes from fences 1 through 8. Olaf Peterson, our course designer here today. Once they jump fence number 8, go through the finish line there. If they've been penalty-free to that point, then they will continue on into the second phase. And we've already seen, of course, that Nicolette just pulled the rail at 4B. So she is going to be working with 4 faults as she rounds the bend of the Turtle Creek vertical here around that Major League Island, coming down to the Netjets triple bar, and that's number 7. And number 8 is the Ottawa and Chippewa Tribes vertical there with the bald eagle wings. And they go through the finish line. You hear the bell. That's a signal to the rider that, of course, they did have those faults in the initial phase, and they are going to finish with a 4-fault penalty. And so that'll be 4 faults in a time of 41.67. And again, if you get those penalties in the first round, you stop there. This is a qualifier for later events in the week in the 2-star ranks. And so the riders who finish up the initial phase here, by that point have completed the round and given themselves the opportunity to be a part of those later competitions. Rider here for Argentina, we have Guillermo Obligado coming up next. And he's aboard entry number 649. This is Hidalgo. Hidalgo is a 13-year-old bay, Belgian warm blood gelding by Codex. Guillermo has been a World Cup finalist and a World Games rider in 2006. He's been placed well throughout the winter in national classes, as well as several speed stake and thermal desert winter circuit competitions earlier this year. They continued to ring ribbons through the spring in Blenheim and Temecula Valley, and then made their way east to compete to ribbons in the Lexington Split Rock Jumping Tour and here in Traverse City so far. As you can see, they have made their way through penalty-free in the initial phase and have gotten the right to stay in for the second phase. And here's where the money would be won. If you make it into that second phase, it's where you're going to kick on the gas and try to get to that finish line quickly. A little bit of an interesting turn that we see here from what is fence number 10B around to number 11, and you see that that plank did drop from the Turtle Creek Casino vertical. They have to actually round the top end of the ring and then come back across that jump. That's actually number 6 going the opposite direction in the initial phase. That's the one that comes down here for Guillermo. So he ends up with 4 faults, and his time coming in. I get that time for you here in just a moment. 27.95 is where he stops the clock. So again, with 4 faults in the speed phase. We'll call it the speed phase here. Katie Dynan coming up next, and her first of 2 rides in the class here today. Athos Del, 11-year-old Chestnut Self-Francais Stallion by Apache Dadre, partnered with Katie since September of 2019. She had win on this one at Saint-Lô and Bordeaux and Auvers young horse classes with her previous rider, Hubert Pignolet. And over the last couple of years, Katie Dynan has placed in several events from the 3, 4, and 5-star level at the Winter Equestrian Festival, Deer Ridge, Live Oak, Upperville, and more, including here in Traverse. Of course, she was a 3-time young rider competitor. And she's coming around the bend here, so far penalty-free as she jumps the 3rd to last fence, approaching that Netjets triple bar. And clear to there. About to get through the first phase, penalty-free, and advance without stopping. So remember, it was a 4-faulter from Guillermo Obligado that set the standard there at 27.95. Katie's clear so far, and by virtue of that could end up topping the list, at least at this stage, should she stay that way. Coming around to the home Major League Oxer, and that's where she'll stop things. Clear round, time of 23.86. So they keep getting better. We had one with faults in the initial phase, another with 4 in the second phase, and now a clear to take over the lead. By the way, I'm Brian Lookabill, glad to be with you here in Traverse City, Michigan. As we've been throughout the course of the spring and summer, we've had an incredible couple of weeks here. Last week, of course, after much preparation, much anticipation, we debuted the Major League Show Jumping Tour with both a team event on Saturday and an individual event on Sunday with the Grand Prix there. And it was an incredible start for the Lucky Charms, who had an all-Irish team posting a penalty-free ride all the way through. And, of course, went into the medal matches there to achieve the top podium position for the gold medal in that team debut. We went on the next day to have the Grand Prix with Carlton W. And Alex Granado earned the top honors with the only double clear in that class. Lots of prize money went out here last week. And, of course, lots of excitement for those who were in attendance, whether they were watching or competing. We've now got Charlie Jacobs out of Boston, Massachusetts, joining us with the CMJ Sport Horse LLC entry. Here is Brain Power, 15-year-old Dutch warm-blood gelding by Contendro, a 6-year partnership with the Charlie. They were top 12 finishers in 3-star 2-phase events out of 73 this season at the Winter Equestrian Festival. Of course, Charlie, since the early 90s, a team competitor for the U.S. More recently, had top honors in Falsterboro, Spruce Meadows, and Buenos Aires in some of those Nations Cup starts. He, as I mentioned, has been a 4-time World Cup finalist. Some of his big individual wins coming in World Cup Grand Prix of the Winter Equestrian Festival and Buenos Aires. And here he is with a knockdown in a first phase combination at fence number 4B. Remember, while there's a bit of prize money here at $5,000 in this Grew family sponsored event, perhaps the biggest objective is to get through the round, at least in this first phase, so that you have completed a competition in the 2-star ranks and have given yourself a chance to show later on in the week. He'll have 4 in a time of 45.27 in the first phase. And that'll bring us then to a ride for Lauren Huff. Oh, pardon me, it looks like it's going to be Kristen Vanderveen coming up next, rather, with Bull Runs Agape. She had an incredible week last week. Came to us to earn medium and large tour wins during our second week of the Great Lakes Equestrian Festival. And that's on the heels of many wins throughout the season. taking top honors in Tryon, North Carolina, early in the season at the Winter Equestrian Festival, more recently at the Split Rock Jumping Tour. And, of course, prior to that, she's been a young rider representative in her earlier years, a World Cup finalist in 2018. And she made her international debut in 2015, breaking into the international scene with three-star wins that season. In fact, she'd been showing internationally prior to that, but that was the first real breakout season for Kristen Vanderveen, and she really hasn't looked back since that time. Victories throughout her stops in the U.S., as well as a couple in France a couple of years back during that World Cup qualifying year. She also pulls the back rail on 4B. And so now she looks like she's going to be taking her time rounding the bend from 5 to 6 just to make sure she gets there. She's not so concerned about a score at this point, knowing that she's going to be out of the top ranks with that knockdown, but she just wants to complete the course so that she is, in fact, good to go on to a later two-star competition this week. Coming around and jumping the final fence, she'll stay at 4. Her time, 48.20. Lauren Huff, legendary rider for the USA, coming up next. Wellington, Florida based. She's been an Olympic rider, a competitor at the World Games on behalf of the U.S. in 2000 and 2010 respectively. Placed medals in all 3 of her Pan Am starts with a team gold in 03, team bronze in 07, and double bronze, meaning team and individual bronze, in her most recent 2015 outing. Big wins all over the map for her as well. Washington, Geneva, Dublin, Spruce Meadows, St. Lo, and other feature events from Hickstead to Rotterdam, Valencia, Toronto, more and more if we could just go on and on. But right now, Italy HDH is her ride. This is an 8-year-old bay gelding by Cream on Top. In Italy HDH, Dutch Warm Blood. She's coming around to fence number 5 and so far penalty-free. So chance for her to get into ribbon contention here in our 2-phase competition. "50-second time allowed." She looks like she'll be easily inside of that, so no jumping or time faults as she crosses through what is the first phase finish and the second phase start. And she's off and running as she approaches and overcomes the Cabana Coast vertical and the Gleff combination. Again, rounding the Major League Island to approach the Turtle Creek Casino vertical in the opposite direction of what she used in the initial phase, and clearing that and coming up on the finish line here, potentially in the new lead. And she will be. Time of 24:85 gets her there. The number 1 position for Lauren Huff in Italy HDH. That's just the second one penalty-free through all phases. Another rider who came to win here in Traverse City, Michigan, had a couple victories in the open jumper ranks last week from the meter 35 and meter 40 divisions. Erin Ballard of Canada. She's also been a valuable team rider for them in the 2018 World Games, the 2019 Pan American Games. And she's had wins from the Winter Equestrian Festival to Tryon, Chicago, Harrisburg, Saugerties, and here. Some of her other top 3 finishes have happened, of course, in her native Canada and Spruce Meadows and Toronto. 4 wins on 3 horses took place in Tryon, North Carolina back in May for Erin Ballard. Today she starts off with Corner Pocket Z, one of her 2 rides in the class. And this is a 9-year-old bay Zangersat gelding by Kornet Obelensky. That's becoming a bogey there, the B element at 4. Another time down. If I'm not mistaken, that's the 4th time we've seen that one drop so far. Which means, of course, we're going to hear the bell ring after the finish line here. And indeed it will. Time will be 44:64. Penalty of 4 faults for the knockdown aboard that Z Group entry. Kyla McClogy, just coming to us for her first week here at the Great Lakes Equestrian Festival. and she is a Wellington, Florida-based amateur rider. Her mount today, Hurry Up B, a 9-year-old chestnut Royal Dutch Warm Blood mare by Kojak. Began with Kyla years back as a 6-year-old. They have lots of young jumper wins in large classes at the Winter Equestrian Festival, Old Salem, Upperville, and more. They also took wins later on in the open jumpers before stepping up to the Grand Prix level in late 2019. Once again, Kyla McClogy. She's had open welcome and Grand Prix ribbons in Saratoga, Vermont, Lake Placid, Saugerties, and Wellington over the past couple of seasons. And let's see if she can make it through. So far, penalty-free, including over the bogey there. A roll back to the Turtle Creek Casino vertical. And then she'll be heading down that home line. Pretty wide there. Not so concerned about time. No one's had problems with that just yet. Approaching the triple bar with some speed and then correcting a bit to get to that vertical, penalty-free, and moving on. Remember, the time to beat here in the second phase, 24.85, which came in from Lauren Huff and Italy HDH. She'll get to the home end there in 25.46. She'll do so penalty-free, and very nicely done there. So that will be a faultless finish again, 25.46. And by the way, going back there, Katie Dinan and Athos Dale will in fact be the best we've seen so far in 23.86, 24.85. Lauren Huff and Italy HDH's time. That puts them into that second position. And so actually Kyla and Hurry Up will finish right now in third, 25.46. Teddy Pritzker, Chicago, Illinois native, and a rider who is just out of the junior ranks this past year. Doing well in the amateur jumpers with top 3 ribbons at the Winter Equestrian Festival, Kentucky Spring, and Traverse City since she arrived. She's here aboard Katunji, 15-year-old Gray Holsteiner gelding by Contact Me. Previously, Kat Tyree showed this horse to ribbons at Washington, the National Horse Show, Toronto, and others throughout Europe as well. Started with Teddy last June, just over a year ago here in Traverse City. And she has had some nice ribbons in Wellington, Kentucky, and Traverse City, as I mentioned. She's going to fall victim to the bogey 4B element. And coming down toward home, carrying the 4 faults there. She'll get up and over the vertical with no further penalties, but the 4 from that earlier knockdown, 44.82. Moving right along here, these 2-phase events go pretty quickly. We're already up to the 9th in the order. Groove Family Tour, large tour event. Thanks to them for sponsoring this 2-star competition. Our next rider out of South Salem, New York will be Eilish Kniff. Rider who's had 2 team gold medals and 3 young rider championship starts. Her mount is Carlotta 249, an 11-year-old Gray Holsteiner mare by Cartani. Acquired this mount in mid-2020 as well after some experience with Daniel Bedoya and Shane Sweetenham for a short time. And they actually debuted right here at the Great Lakes Equestrian Festival a year ago. As I mentioned, a gold medalist in 2 of her 3 outings at the Young Rider North American Championships. So she's, of course, quite proven, and she's had significant experience since far back in 2014 internationally in Europe and the U.S. Right now demonstrating her confidence as she goes up against a pretty talented group of riders and is so far fault-free. Just 2 jumps left before she's got a chance to advance to the second phase. and she is good to go. So at this point is where she would want to put the pedal down and try to catch that 23.86 leader from Katie Dinan and Athos Dell. And it looks to me like she is not exactly blazing the pace here. She's just sort of taking it fairly easy on her way around. Not running and gunning in this early part of the week. And we'll get up and over the final jump penalty free in a time of 28.05. So 1, 2, 3, and 4 in the clear order are the exact same for the standings. They are an order of appearance placing right now, with the fourth one to go penalty free being fourth in the ranking at this point. Quentin Judge, U.S. rider, who's been on Nations Cup teams in Spain, Spruce Meadows, Buenos Aires, Bratislava, and Kopeksepan since he made his winning debut back in 2012 for the team. He's been a World Cup finalist as well. And over the past couple of years, he's had wins in Guillaume, Spain, Spruce Meadows, Winter Equestrian Festival, LA, Ontario, and of course more on the national level. He rides HH Zorro Z, 8-year-old Grey Zangersat gelding by VDL Zaraco Blue. This pair has been together since late 2019, so coming up on sort of their 2-year anniversary together. Quentin showed wins in the 6-year-old young jumpers and 7-year-olds after moving up, and then eventually into the National Grand Prix late last year. He's also sort of taken an easy pace here in the initial phase before he approaches the last 2 jumps to qualify to advance. And with no problem on the course or the clock, he'll do so. Now setting sights on a 23.86 time if he hopes to take over any lead here. Not doing too bad on the clock there. 23.86 is his target, though, so he is behind that at this point. Looks like he's going to go middle of the pack, 26.27. He'll actually go just ahead of Eilish into 4th place. So some folks looking at the actual ribbons and prize money available here. Some of them looking at the potential to qualify for later events in the season, or not in the season, but in the week here. Or some of them trying to balance the two. Maybe if you're feeling good about your horse's chances today, you go ahead and gun it to the finish line, so you maybe have a quick time, but you still don't want to mess up your opportunity to get through a round here so that you can, in fact, get into those later 2-star competitions. Well, now we've got Mark Kinsella. Mark will ride out of Aurora, Ontario, Canada, but he is on behalf of Ireland. He's had a top 2 placing here in Traverse City over the last 2 weeks. That one came in another 2-phase event aboard Viking de l'Homme, but now he's riding Grasshopper. And Grasshopper is a 10-year-old Royal Dutch Warm Blood mount owned by Caroline de Vittorio. Starting over the Captive One Advisors vertical, and then again the signature Major League Oxer that debuted here last week during our first stage of the Major League Show Jumping Tour in its first ever competition here in Traverse City. He's overcome all of the toughest obstacles we've seen so far here, namely that 4B element that's been so much trouble for many in the first part of this class. And he's clearing through. Grasshopper good to go. Down at the later combination, no. So he has that rail at the Gleff Oxer, number 10A. And the plank. Now it's on those flat cups, of course, making it quite easy to knock down. He's working on 8 faults as he comes to the finish line, and will do so in 26.08. So an 8-fault second phase for Mark Kinsella. A Grace Debney ride up next. She represents Great Britain out of her base in Hampton, Massachusetts. Here today aboard Zarina de Vidal, 10-year-old bay mare by Diamant de Semely. Grace riding on behalf of Temple Equestrian LLC. She's had some top threes this season in Upperville, Virginia, placing at the top of the list at a Table A event at Old Salem, New York back in May. And throughout the course of the winter season, an under 25 winner and several Grand Prix placings at the Winter Equestrian Festival. Once again, Zarina de Vidal is the mount here today. A 10-year-old bay mare. And just a couple jumps left before she's able to advance. She's penalty free and moving on now. Our 12th to go in this Groove Family Large Tour order. And it's a U.S. leader right now. In fact, all clear riders to this point have been from the USA. But she made an aggressive turn around to that casino vertical there, brought to us by Turtle Creek Hotel and Casino. And she was very quick. The unfortunate result of that was the knockdown at the plank. So she does have 4 faults, but she demonstrates to us that if approached properly there in that finish, we could have a very quick time. 21.74 is quicker, but it does come with a knockdown 4 fault penalty. Moving along now, Tori Ketchum for the USA, here aboard Copperline Farm LLC's Isaac 22. She's out of Wellington, Florida, as are so many riders these days. She was aboard Isaac 22, a 13-year-old Bay Belgian gelding by Nonstop, entry number 948. Off and running now. So far throughout the last season, she's been a top contestant in events in Wellington, Columbus, Ohio a couple years back, as well as last season, the Split Rock Jumping Tour there with this mount. She's good to go. When you don't hear that bell after the finish line of the first phase, they're qualified to advance, but as you saw, she puts her hand up. That's a signal to our judges. I'm not going to compete in that second phase. I've accomplished what I came to do. Just wanted to make sure I completed a course here, potentially, and gave myself the chance to show later on in the week. Sometimes these riders want to save their horses for where the big money lies in those later classes. Well, it looks like we're going to see Rodrigo Lambre next. Scratched from the order there in the 14th position if you had one of those original postings. But right now, again, Rodrigo Lambre will join us. He represents Brazil. And he's here aboard Bacogan de Saint-Jean. Rodrigo has been a competitor at the Pan Am Games for a team victory, the most recent outing back in 2019. He is going to take out that 4B element, earning himself 4 faults in this first phase. Top 3 in a couple of classes with the Bacogan de Saint-Jean in the last couple of weeks here in Traverse City, Michigan. Prior to that, he was successful with wins in several events throughout his stops in Mexico, from Monterrey, La Silla to Puebla, and as well overseas in San Galen Switzerland and Le Beau in France before coming to Traverse City. He does have that one knockdown in the first phase here, and of course that means the bell is going to ring, and he'll have the 4-fault finish in the first phase. McKenna Norris coming up next, rider for the U.S. McKenna out of Kirkland, Washington. She's here aboard Cristal, Colorado. Now, Cristal, Colorado, again, her mount, a 14-year-old bay Royal Dutch Warmblood gelding. She should be making her way down here just a moment through the Traverse City Horse Show's arch. Now, of course, we did have that one scratch. Rodrigo making his way in place of the number 14 scratch there. McKenna maybe not quite as ready, so it looks like maybe we'll be moving on then to Antonio Maurer. Rider from Mexico, in fact, coming in next. Antonio Maurer coming in, and again, he's riding here from Mexico. Another one stepping up a position early. Here aboard San Dorado. And Antonio Maurer once again riding on behalf of Mexico with San Dorado. This is a 13-year-old mount. A top 2 finisher this season in a Grand Prix at San Miguel de Allende, Monterrey, La Silla, and a couple of other placings in events from Valvanera and Leon in the late phases of 2020. One rail down at number 6 in the first phase. So that is a 4-fault penalty. Time in that phase for Antonio was 43.99. Now we'll see McKenna Norris and her entry out of Kirkland, Washington, Cristal, Colorado. Now Cristal, Colorado, the 14-year-old bay Dutch Warmblood gelding by Verdi. Ride from Kirkland, Washington, in fact. So far this season, she's competed out on the Thermal Desert Circuit Tour in the early part of the year. Showed to several ribbons in the open division out there in the national classes. Also showed in the ribbons in the amateur owner ranks there. Eventually making her way east to the Kentucky Springs Series after picking up some top 4 placings in Grand Prix and a top 8 placings in under 25 ranks late in the Winter Series. So far since coming east, she's been a 10th place finisher in the junior amateurs over at Split Rock and is just joining us here in Traverse City for this week at the Great Lakes Equestrian Festival. Carrying no fault so far, rounding the bend to jump the triple bar, hopefully staying clear over the Ottawa and Chippewa Tribes vertical. Indeed, she will be, and that's why she's advancing. As she does so, her target is that of Katie Dinan and Athos DL, who lead the way in 23.86. By the way, at this point, about 9 rounds remain before we're going to take a midway drag break here in our Groove Family 2-phase competition. She's coming up on the finish, doing so quickly, but pulling the rail in the process. 24:21, the 4-fault time here for McKenna and Cristal, Colorado. Again, 24:21 and 4 faults. Welcoming in next, Chandler Meadows. Again, riders are moving through this order quickly here. We're about 9 rounds from a midway drag break. Newport Beach, California, the home base of this amateur rider. Chandler Meadows here with Easy Boy. Easy Boy is a 12-year-old chestnut gelding by Tangelo van de Zothove, the Dutch warm blood. Couple of top placings in open jumpers throughout the course of the Kentucky Spring Split Rock Jumping Tour events there in Lexington. Stopping there at the 4A element. Of course, that's going to mean a 4-fault penalty for the refusal. It's also going to eliminate her possibility of advancing to the second phase. So with a stop and the resulting 4 faults, she rounds the bend to jump number 6, and then it'll be that triple bar in the Ottawa and Chippewa Tribes vertical to wrap it up here in this first phase. And you'll hear the bell ring there as Chandler Meadows wraps her round up. Should she do so without further penalty or stop, then she'll have qualified by completing a course here, the 2-star event. 71:44 is the time, so it's 4 jumping, 6 on the clock, a total of 10 faults. Brings us now to a ride for Sean Cassidy. Sean is here now out of his original base in Harriman, Tennessee. He's been out on the West Coast quite a bit over the past several years. And he is now aboard for Corinne Bevis from Carpinteria, California. His mount is known as Tilenchi Z, 10-year-old bay mare by Tyson. He's had some big ribbons on the West Coast Tour in Thermal, California in the early season. Temecula Valley Spring Series as well. He's been with us over the course of the last 2 weeks here in Traverse City, Michigan. And he's had a couple of top 3s in the 2-star events from the small, medium, and large tours. Sean Cassidy, a rider who competed on young rider teams during his junior years. In fact, he was twice part of the teams there with a bronze and in the team medals and a silver individually, I should say, back in 2012. Of course, that's been a long time since, and he's very well established himself as a leading professional rider. Coming around the bend to jump number 11, hoping to stay clear. And it looks like he's trying for a time here. Remember, 23:86 is the target. We've seen prior fast efforts. That one, 24.53, comes without penalty and is just off the quick mark. He's going to go into second place right now, 24.53. No faults at all there for Sean Cassidy. Julio David Weiner and Cassini Gold coming to us next. Rider for Mexico. Here out of Mexico City, in fact. Cassini Gold, 14-year-old gray Holsteiner stallion by Cassini 2. Should be just 5 or 6 rounds now before we go on to the drag break in the middle of this competition. So far this season, Julio David Weiner has been competing in Wellington, Florida, Mexico, and several stops. He's had a couple of ribbons in feature events and Grand Prix there in San Miguel de Allende in the early spring. Traverse City over the last couple of weeks here, he's been competing as well. And nicely ridden through that combination that's caused so many problems for prior competitors. Bit of a steady pace as he makes his way around. Remember, they've got to get to the finish line there within 50 seconds. He's not going to really have any trouble with that. Saving his speed perhaps for where it's needed. He's through the finish in 44 and change. Has the chance to move on to that second phase, but it looks like he's going to tip his hat to that opportunity. So though he is clear in the initial phase, he's going to save the efforts of Cassini Gold for another event. Bringing us now to Ireland's David Blake. David Blake, based out of Wellington, Florida, riding for Pine Hollow Farm, where he is a resident professional. And again, throughout the course of the early season, a Grand Prix winner in Wellington, Florida, aboard this very Mount Desento. Took top honors back in April aboard Desento. And that's not to mention several other placings on this, as well as other mounts, Don't Touch Du Bois and Kyoki in the early season. He's also been in the ribbons in Tryon, North Carolina, and Upperville, Virginia Grand Prix competition and feature events in more recent months. Twice he has shown at the European Championships as a junior and young rider. David Blake riding this bay gelding by Zento, 13 years of age, a Royal Dutch warm blood gelding. He also looks like he's got a fairly steady pace, but you know, David's a pretty tall rider. His horse probably has a fairly big stride, and so it might be fooling you as to how quick he's actually going. And of course, in this first phase, that speed doesn't matter nearly as much as it does in phase two. So he's coming up around the finish line in that first phase and good to go. Giving his horse a pat. Congratulating the mount on a penalty-free qualifying effort there and deciding as well to continue no further. Kara Rather Carey coming up next as we approach the midway point of the class. She's out of Bedford, New York, riding for Trelawney Farm. And her own mount Feberlis is the 11-year-old gay gelding by Cornetto Belinsky. Of course, she's been a part of a bronze medal winning team at the Pan American Games back in 2007. She's had her fair share of wins from New York, Syracuse, as well as in Fontainebleau while touring through Europe. Many other Grand Prix top 2 and 3 placings over the last several years for Kara Rather Carey, riding Feberlis. Two jumps left, and she will be through if she can keep it penalty free. She's on her way. It looks like she's going to stick around for the speed effort. Trying again to outpace 23.86. Katie Dinan in the lead right now. She's about halfway there as she approaches number 11. And down to one final jump to finish out this speed phase. She's on a pretty good target pace, but just behind when she finishes in 24.74. Nicely done there by Kara. Bliss Here's coming up next. One of this year's shortlisted riders for the team that's going to Tokyo. Of course, the team more recently has been selected, and they are on to the games coming up in just a few days there. Bliss is out of Las Vegas, Nevada. And here aboard the 11-year-old Basel Francais Stallion by Diamant de Semilly, this is Antidote de Mars for Bridgeside Farms, LLC. She has been a Nations Cup rider on behalf of the U.S. team this season, including in the early part of the year there in Wellington. In fact, during that outing there at the Winter Equestrian Festival, a member of the winning team for the Nations Cup. Was here throughout the course of the season. Has had several top 2 placings in feature events, including here. She was a winning round, or excuse me, a false converted runner-up during last week's competition. Spent lots of time in Europe before coming back here to the U.S. to compete so successfully over recent years. She's circling around defense number 11, the first of 2 jumps remaining, though she goes pretty wide there. A deliberate approach to the plank vertical. And rounding the bend to approach the final fence off that quick pace, but it looks like just trying to keep it clear. She'll do it. 29.15, the penalty-free time. And now we'll move along to an entry of Mountain King Ranch. Dominic Gibbs will ride out of Colorado Springs, Colorado, here with the Brush Hollow Sales entry. Excuse me, the Mountain King Ranch entry, that is. It is a horse known as Amazing, 9-year-old bay mare by Baltimore. Dominic Gibbs just this season breaking into the international ranks with an under 25 win during the Winter Equestrian Festival, as well as a runner-up and a couple of other top 12 placings there in the under 25 ranks in Wellington. Demonstrating his ability to get through as the combination has been cleared, and he's only got these last couple of fences to give himself a chance at the speed round. Just 18 years old, competing against some of the world's best here in our large tour event brought to us by the Grue family. And he's coming around to the final fence there. Looks like he'll be off the quick pace, but clearing pretty fast in 25.14. So 25.14 and penalty free. And now we'll see another out of Canada, King City, Ontario based. Christine Carlson, Valhalla Equestrians Corradina will be the mount here. Christine rode several years back at the North American Junior and Young Rider Championships, Continental games for those who are coming up through the ranks and are trying to be identified for potential team representation. Christine aboard for Valhalla Equestrian from King City, as I mentioned. This is Corradina. Christine Carlson with the knockdown at the A element of that combination. That is where about 90% of our riders have had penalties here today in the first phase of competition. And that's why the bell rings there at the end of the first phase. 4-fault finish, 42-59 time. Far earlier on, we saw a rider for Argentina. Now another joining us. This is Ignacio Mauren, and he's here with Storbeker, number 1477. Ignacio, competitor who's shown at the South American Games. Done that on 2 occasions. His horse here today, Storbeker 20, is a 10-year-old Bay Hanoverian stallion by Stosenberg. Successful through the tough parts of the course, rounding the bend here to number 6 in his hope of qualifying for the speed phase. And he is in fact underway with his speed opportunity now. A little correction there on the front side of the hashtag Gleff Oxer going into the combination. It looks like that paid off. Deliberate approach to the Turtle Creek Casino roulette wheel vertical, and he's coming down pretty quick to the finish, but that's where the trouble lies. Little miscommunication on the way to that final Oxer, and they're going to take that one out with 4 faults and 24.14. I think they were on pace there for a new lead had it not been for the fact that his horse just didn't feel it going into that Oxer. We're on the approach side of that fence, so couldn't exactly see what the distance looked like from the side angle there, but nonetheless, they'll take it down and finish with 4 in 24.14. And here's the last one before the drag break. Rider out of Brewster, New York, who was a member of the winning team last week in our Major League show jumping Saturday night performance. The medal winning rider, in fact, he was in the tie-breaking match there for the gold medal podium on Saturday night and did quite nicely for Team Lucky Charms. Along with Shane Sweetnam and Andrew Bournes, the all-Irish contingent started things off for the Major League Show Jumping Tour with a bang on Saturday night. He's going to be joined by a couple of different riders here this coming Saturday for the second stage of competition. Recently, he's also been a top contestant in 2 events at Upperville, Virginia, including the Grand Prix there. Old Salem, New York, a couple of wins to his credit in 2- and 3-star events also this season, and prior to that as well, from the Winter Equestrian Festival and multiple victories, Monterey throughout the course of the Spring Series, showing to the top of the class as well. So he's had an incredible year. Has Jordan Coyle with a Lawn Farms entry, Balioskill Big Bucks, 8-year-old bay gelding by Royal Concord. And he is penalty-free approaching the finish line of the first phase and has a chance to continue. Definitely knows how to turn it on when he needs to. Let's see whether he chooses to do so in this early class of the large tour this week. Looks like he's taking it fairly easy as he rounds the bend to number 11. Looking for a good experience, perhaps. Not a slow time, but certainly not a winning effort, perhaps, but he does pull the rail as well. So along with a 26.03 time, that will be a second phase 4-faulter. Let's take a quick look at the top of the standings here. Katie Dine and the Trailblazer in the clear column, leading the way still with Athos Dell. We've got Sean Cassidy and Talentia Z a fraction back for second. Kara Rather Carey and Feberleys in third. Lauren Huff and Italy HDH in fourth. With Dominic Gibbs fifth aboard Amazing. Kyla McClogy in sixth with Hurry Up B. And rounding out the clears so far today, Quentin Judge with H.H. Zorro in 7th, Ailish Kniff with Carlotta 249 in 8th, Bliss Hears with Antidote Demars in 9th. That's our Groove family top 9, and the ones who have cleared both phases of the course so far. We're halfway, and we'll be back after a 10-minute break to continue on.
Sometimes we laugh, sometimes we cry, but I guess you know now, babe. I took the half and she took the whole thing. Slow down, babe. We took a trip, now we on your block, and it's like a ghost town, babe. Where did these be at when they say they doing all this and all that? Tired of beefing you on, you can't even pay me enough to react. Been waking up in the crib, but sometimes I don't even know where I'm at. Please don't play that songs in this party, I can't even listen to that. Anytime that I run into somebody, it must be a victory lap. Hey, shawty come sit on my lap. Hey, they saying Drizzy just snap. This in between us is not like a store, this isn't a closable gap. Hey, I see some tag, and don't end up making it back. Baby, time. Come sit on my lap. Hey, they saying Drizzy just snap. This in between us is not like a store. This isn't a closable gap. Hey, I see some tag and don't end up making it back. Baby, time. Baby, time. Baby, time. Baby, time. Baby, time. talk about you now. I hear you're happy and it's hard to know. I sometimes wander past your house because I think of you, I always think of you. Seasons change and I remember how you loved me like September. Time goes by and I pretend that I don't think of you, 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 that I don't think of you. I only miss you when I open my eyes and I breathe and I try to forget that I let you go. I only miss you when I'm closing my eyes, try to sleep and I cry to forget that I let you go. I only miss you when I open my eyes and I breathe and I try to forget that I let you go. I only miss you when I'm closing my eyes, try to sleep and I cry to forget that I let you go. I only miss you when
Coming out of our drag break midway through the Groove Family Large Tour class here, it's a two-phase event. We've seen a majority of riders get through the initial phase if they're clear and, in fact, go on to the jump off, but there have been a few who have chosen not to do so. Two-star events later on in the week require that you've completed a course in the early week to be eligible, and so they are doing that in some cases, but some are, in fact, going for the money. And the one who's got it currently in her hands is Katie Dynan on the hooves of Athos Del. And next we'll welcome in Thomas Joffre, here representing Argentina, and aboard a horse named Cardora. This has been his regular mount throughout the season, ever since Wellington on through Tryon into the Split Rock Tour in Lexington. They've had a couple of ribbons in the international ranks, including the Grand Prix toward the end of the season in Wellington, Florida. Thomas Joffre aboard Cardora once again. Cardora is an 11-year-old Grey Holsteiner mare by Caratino. If you are just joining us at this halfway point, most of the troubles we have had here in the initial phase have been at either 4A or B, with 4B being the predominant four-fault fence. We have had a refusal at 4A, but most of the knockdowns have been at 4B. And in the second phase, I'd say that the Turtle Creek Casino vertical with the roulette wheel wings is where most of the knockdowns have happened, sometimes as a result of an aggressive turn back there trying to save some time on the way to the final fence, or the second to last fence, I should say. But for the most part, once they've gotten into that second phase, they've stayed clear. And Thomas Joffre is about to emerge through this first phase without penalty. Clearing and qualifying Cardora to advance. Target time is 23.86. And it's a pretty quick second phase course here, if you choose to do it. And it looks like that is not going to be the decision for Thomas Joffre. He's gotten up and over the hashtag Gleff combination in that second phase and chose to stop it there. He's had a pretty good experience up to this point in the class and decides to call it a day. Next, we'll see Ellie Yeager, rider for the U.S. out of Wellington, Florida, piloting Iceman Demuse. And she's through the beam and starting the clock here with Iceman Demuse. So this is a 13-year-old Bay Belgian stallion by Erko van der Roesacker. Ellie competes out of the junior amateur ranks. It's been a top finisher in Loudon, Virginia during the mid-June events there in a junior amateur classic competition. That came aboard Waliba VDL. Iceman Demuse is her high amateur and open jumper mount. Showed into the ribbons in some of the amateur classes during the Winter Equestrian Festival this season with this horse. Competed in the Upperville Grand Prix and the Loudon Grand Prix as well. She's still looking for a big finish, however, at the national level. And today, she'll get all the way through with no faults. And a 24.4 time will actually put her second in a pretty competitive class here today. 24.40, and again into second place for Iceman Demuse and Ellie Yeager. Rider out of La Jolla, California, but a representative of Mexico is Juan Carlos Martín del Campo, here aboard Fina W. Fina W is an 11-year-old bay Royal Dutch Warmblood gelding by Cantos. Juan Carlos again here with the mount today. Top finisher over the last several years in Guadalajara and Leon in 3- and 4-star events, as well as events in San Miguel de Allende. Some of those Grand Prix, some of them just feature competitions. Very, very regularly in the top 3 ribbons over the course of the last 3 seasons and several events throughout his native Mexico. And he's good to go here. Until the Gleff combination, the B element there coming down. Penalty of 4 as he rounds the bend of the second to last jump. And now he's approaching the finish, doing so with just the 4 faults there in a time of 26.85. All right, so back to U.S. riders now with Catherine Strauss out of New York, New York coming up next. Catherine Strauss with Coach, the 13-year-old Bay Holsteiner gelding by Conair. Rider who regularly competes out of the amateur ranks. She has been a 4-time rider at the North American Junior Young Rider Championship. She's never missed a medal in those outings, with 3 team golds and a team silver, 1 individual silver over the course of those 4 starts. Those came aboard Chalando, Z, and All In. She still shows all in regularly. Again, right now, Coach is the mount. She's number 223 for scoring here today. And she is onward to the second phase. Glad you're with us here on our Clip My Horse TV broadcast, watching our Great Lakes Equestrian Festival Week 3 large tour event brought to us by the Groove family. And it's a two-phase, as you can see. Catherine Strauss making short work of the second phase. Can she beat that 23 and change time? 24:32 is the penalty-free time, and she goes into second place, about a half second behind Katie Dynan. And, of course, Katie Dynan, one of her teammates on some of those outings at the Young Rider Championships. So now it's first for Katie, second for Catherine Strauss, third for Ellie Yeager. Very, very close competition at the top. Olivia Chowdhury will be our next competitor. She is based in Denver, Colorado. She's had a pretty good year. Top finisher in Lexington, Kentucky in Bluegrass Grand Prix action. She is here aboard Chuck Berry 8, the 14-year-old bay Hanoverian gelding by Chaco Blue. Very good couple of years over the last few seasons for Olivia Chowdhury. Wins in Kentucky, Knokke, Belgium, Wellington during the Winter Equestrian Festival. Several stops on other European Tour outings for Olivia Chowdhury. She's really been hitting her stride once again in these last couple of years. So she's making her way around now. She's got 2 jumps left with a 4-fault penalty so far. Hers came at the A element of that double combination, the vertical down there, and her time is 41.76 with the 4. A second ride coming up now for Kristen van der Veen. This time around, she'll be here aboard Faustino de Tilly, the Bull Run Jumpers entry. 16-year-old gray Belgian stallion by Berlin. As I mentioned during Kristen's early ride here, the first half of the class, she has really had a great couple of seasons, really coming to a head here in 2021, as she's had victories back during the early season in Wellington, Florida. She has gone on to take victories as well in Tryon, North Carolina. She really made a mark on our Traverse City season here with small, medium, and large tour wins last week. She was also a runner-up in our Grand Prix competition on Sunday. Faustino de Tilly has had 3, or actually 4 victories, I should say, under Kristen's handling this year. A couple of them here in Traverse City, Michigan, in faults converted action, as well a few at the Winter Equestrian Festival, as I reported earlier on. And she is making a fairly unconventional decision, looks like to hack around a bit here and potentially jump no fences on this mount. She did something similar last week just to get her horse in the arena. And it looks like she's going to take advantage of that time now as well as she exits the ring with no score. Ashley Vogel will ride next. So Ashley Vogel, who came top of the list in our $36,000 Netjets Large Tour class last week with Bellissimo Z, is now going to be here with Lucy in the Sky. Of course, a rider for the U.S. Ashley's out of Wellington, Florida. Lucy in the Sky, a 12-year-old bay mare by Tournesh. She's the owner and rider. Grand Prix victory. Grand Prix level victory, I should say, here in the large tour event. She also has had a couple of other feature wins here in Traverse City, Michigan. And she's coming back around and on a tear, it would seem, as she makes her way into the second phase. She might be looking for a check today in this Groove Family two-phase event. And if she can get back around there in 17 or less, she'll be on a leading target time. In fact, she is on her way to possibly a new lead, and she'll get there in 22:88. Top of the list to Ashley Vogel, taking over the victory possibly with Lucy in the Sky. Still quite a few to go here. In fact, we've got about 13 more in the round, but after the early runner Katie Dynan has dominated through most of the class here today, someone finally shows that a quicker, clear time is possible, and it is 22:88. Next we go to Alexa Betito Romero. She is here from Mexico with Mislante LS. Mislante LS is the 11-year-old bay mare by Manzanillo LS. Alexa, the owner and rider, out of her base in Lomas Altas in Mexico. She's 36th on the original order of go here. A single knockdown, I should say, here in the first phase, and so she's carrying 4 faults as she gets to the finish line, and her time will be 47.14. Erin Ballard once again joins us, her second ride of the class here. This will be Django Dulis. When she came in earlier on, we talked about some of her Great Lakes Equestrian Festival wins last week. One of them came aboard Django Dulis, the 8-year-old Basal Francais gelding by Landstrom. A young horse winner in Europe before she took on the ride. Early in 2021, this one came to the U.S. under Mexico's Eugenio Garza, competing in the open and amateur classes at WEF, Kentucky, and in Tryon. But just recently, Erin has taken it on, and as I mentioned, already a winner here in Traverse City. As I also mentioned earlier, World Games and Pan Am rider, and many times a part of Nations Cup teams for Canada. Really excellent style, as was identified very early in her career. She had a couple of big equitation wins in Canada and the U.S. And what a horse here with a correction over the Gleff Oxer going into that combination. Very careful getting there and coming around with another quick time. She could be on target here for a new lead, if not for the knockdown. She will be pretty quick in 22.32. In fact, half a second quicker than Ashley Vogel, but she's got the rail there at the final fence. So a 4-fault penalty in that time. 22:32 is the second fastest of the 4-faulters. If you want to know what the absolute fastest possible time over this course is, 21:74 can give you an indication. That was another 4-faulter with Grace Debney pulling a rail as well. But at least you know what's possible. Of course, doing that with the avoidance of a knockdown is the objective here. And so far, the one who's done that the best is Ashley Vogel and Lucy in the Sky on 22:32. Alberto Sanchez Cozar, next to go, out of Lomas de Chapultepec in Mexico. Claudia Michel Rodriguez entry. This is Abril Ilcha Z, number 1775. So again, it is a rider from Mexico, competitor who showed just a couple of years back to a team gold, individual silver at the North American Junior Young Rider Championships. And he's making short work in a stylish manner over the initial phase here and giving himself an opportunity to go after the lead. Early this season, they had a couple of wins, including Grand Prix victories in Valvanera in Mexico, and that's among several other placings throughout the winter and spring season down there. So far on pace for a possible new lead. They seem to have found their way to a quick time here. 23:06. A few rounds back, that would have been good enough for the new top spot, but of course, it's not going to overtake Ashley Vogel's 22:88 time, just 2/10 behind. But a clear one, so giving him credit for that. 58 will show, and we're on the 39th in the order. Quentin Judge coming up next. A short while ago, I think I might have said 13 remaining. It was actually 23 at that point. Anyway, here we are with 20 left now. Quentin Judge coming up. Second of his rides is in. Quentin is Wellington, Florida based. Again, he's been on several Nations Cup teams for the U.S., many times part of winning team outings. His mount now, H.H. Philonis, is an 8-year-old Bay Oldenburg gelding by Felou de Muse. New pairing in February of this year, but they've already had a fifth in a welcome class in Saugerties, New York. Quentin coming around seemingly with no problems to this point, with only 3 jumps left in the first phase. Would have thought there would have been more knockdowns at that Turtle Creek Casino and Hotel vertical there, with the plank being on those flat cups coming around the bend, but that's only really happened in the second phase for the most part. He's good so far into round 2, or phase 2 I should say, but as I mentioned that, he ends up with double knockdowns in the double combination. So 8 faults carried by Quentin and H.H. Philonis right now. Coming through the final line, and it's the 8 in 29-1-1. 8 faults. Chicago-based rider coming up next. It'll be Teddy Pritzker with her second entry in the class. So this will be Jewel LVP coming up. Again, rider who has just emerged out of the junior ranks and into the amateur ranks. It's Teddy Pritzker from Chicago, Illinois, with Evergreen Stables entry. 12-year-old bay Belgian mare by Berlin. Bell rings, and she is clear to start her effort here with Jewel LVP. When they first got together late last year, it took them a little bit of a while to get their stride together, but once they did, they started earning ribbons in the Winter Equestrian Festival in the medium amateur competitions there. They continued doing so throughout the course of the winter and spring in Wellington, and then, of course, through Kentucky in May, and we've seen them show into the ribbons here several times in the high junior and amateur ranks. Top 3, the best placing so far in the amateurs for Teddy on this mount. Earlier on, we saw her with just one knockdown in the first phase, so she'll try to avoid that this time around to give herself a chance at the speed course. That one, of course, came aboard Katunji. Avoiding penalties at what have been the problem fences here in the first phase. And now getting through with just 2 jumps left before she can turn it on. She's good to go into that speed round. Again, after number 11 on the landing side there, a mark to watch out for is 17 seconds or less if you think they want to be on target pace. She's gone pretty wide to the Turtle Creek vertical, so she's going to be behind that necessary pace if she wants to take over the lead, but staying clear is itself an accomplishment. She'll do so in 25:37. So netting right now 10th place is Teddy Pritzker with Jewel LVP. Second ride as well for Mark Kinsella. Again, a rider for Ireland, based out of Aurora, Ontario, Canada. Here aboard the Alberto Torres entry, this is Viking de l'Homme. Good to go so far here with 3 jumps left, so halfway through. And he's coming around. He's good to go in the speed phase. Little correction in the middle of the double combination there and staying clear so far. Fighting his way to a tight turn over the Turtle Creek vertical, but it's not unfortunately going to pay off because they'll have that one down. Mark having just taken on that ride recently in June, and he's going to score 4 in a time of 21.10. So the inside cut definitely gets him a quick finish, but it does so at the expense of the plank coming down. And again, this is one of those courses where you can pretty well identify where people are going to have problems a majority of the time. It's either going to be in the 4A or B portions in the first phase, or we've had a few with second phase double combination issues there at 10AB, and those who have really tried to get aggressive in the turn back to number 11 have a couple of times had that one down. Here we go with Eilish Kneff's second ride, Vivaldi du Thiel, number 978. Eilish, a New York-based rider, aboard this 12-year-old bay Celle Francais gelding by Quincy. This was a 5th place finisher in Old Salem and a 10th place finisher in Winter Equestrian Festival Grand Prix action this season in Wellington. She makes a nice wide and deliberate approach to the Turtle Creek vertical as it's number 6 in the first phase. Lining up on that one nicely. Triple bar clear and as well faultless over the last fence in the first phase with just under 4 seconds to spare to get into the speed round. And she's continuing on here, hoping to stay clear. Let's see what she gets on the landing side of number 11. Behind the pace for a lead possibly, unless she can make up some time going into the Major League Oxer. Behind the pace there as well, but she's clear, and that's, again, its accomplishment in 25.75. If you've got one of the original orders here, you may have the 43rd in that order. We're not going to be seeing Sergio today. Julio David Viner will, in fact, be next. Another ride from Mexico, out of Mexico City, here with De Fleur 3Z, a 10-year-old chestnut Zangerside gelding, or stallion rather, by Der Senetz. No offense, De Fleur. Getting into that speed round, and bettering 22.88 would be the objective at this point. DeFore 3 fighting the bit just a little bit here as they come around, both on the approach to the combination and circling back to number 6. But Julio David Viner doing a nice job of keeping things under control. And they are through now. Let's see if they turn it on in the second phase. Not that real quick, tight cut back to number 11 that we've seen from many, but they also avoid knockdown as a result there. So they're staying clear on the approach to the final fence. A fairly steady pace gets them to the finish line in 26.86. So we'll have Mario Oñate coming up next. Mario here with Pampero, number 2485. Pampero, 11-year-old bay gelding, the Oldenburg mount. The horse is by Chaco Blue, well-known stud. Mario Oñate, again, a rider here for Mexico. And he pulls that A element at number 4 here in the initial phase. So he's carrying 4 faults as he rounds the bend to number 6. Coming wide there. And if you can just complete this 2-star course, then you have at least earned yourself an opportunity to come back in later competition. Looks like he's going to pull up, though. He actually did have 2 knockdowns there, both the A and B elements, number 4. So at that point, he chooses not to finish the first phase. And we'll see Adrian Sternlicht coming up next. U.S. rider joining us here aboard Cadanzi, number 2749. And Cadanzi, a 12-year-old gray mare by Coroso VDL. She rides this one for Starlight Farms LLC out of Greenwich, Connecticut. World Games contestant in the winning team that showed in Tryon just a few years back. Gold medal effort there for the U.S. and, of course, Adrian contributing to that. She's had a couple of big wins so far this season. Grand Prix victory in Saugerties, New York. Top finish in a two-star Grand Prix as well in Old Salem. And, of course, she started off the year right at the Winter Equestrian Festival, taking several wins there. She also, of course, went on the European Tour in Poland and the Netherlands, showing the ribbons in those stops as the U.S. team and those who had hopes of possibly going on to represent us in Olympic efforts were trying to prove themselves on that tour. But she's got 4 here today. So far with Cadanzi, it's the A element that we've been talking about. And she comes to the finish line a little bit slow. That wide turn, no doubt, going back to number 6, playing a role in a 51.09 finish time with 4 faults. McKenna Norris now back in. She is here with the Lucas 1054. By the way, a total there for Cadanzi, of course, was 4 plus 1. 5 faults for Adrian. McKenna Norris again from Kirkland, Washington. Her mount will be Lucas 1054. 12-year-old by La Corotondo is the gray stallion. Rider for the USA is 47th in the order, and that leaves 11 more to show here in our Groove Family 2-phase competition. She's faultless in the first phase and moving on to the second. Down there at the Cabana Coast vertical. Successful, though, through the double of Oxers there at our hashtag GLEF, Great Lakes Equestrian Festival combination. And taking back just a bit on the approach to number 11 to keep it clear. And up and over the final fence as well. Just the knockdown at the Cabana Coast vertical carries through the finish in a 4-fault effort. Her time is 31.01. We'll have Gavin Harley come up next. Gavin Harley for Ireland out of his base in Wellington, Florida. Cavalli de Magico is the Clear Ride LLC entry. This one is a 11-year-old chestnut Belgian stallion by Emerald van het Rudershof. Gavin now has made his way in through the arch here, so we'll be seeing what he's got to offer here. Again, a rider for Ireland. We've got Ashley Vogel of the U.S. currently in the lead. Cavalli de Magico has, up to this point, been shown recently by Jimmy Turano and Sam Walker until earlier this year. And now Gavin Harley takes on the ride. just now breaking into the international ranks as a rider himself aboard this one, though he's had a lot of his own success earlier this season. Grand Prix, or rather a Table A win and a runner-up and third place finish in 2- and 3-star events early in the season there in Wellington. He's many times been in our ribbons in the Grand Prix and feature classes here in Traverse City since the first week of the Great Lakes Equestrian Festival. And he made it into the speed phase here, but did pull that rail at 10B. So 4 faults as he rounds the bend. And we'll get to the finish line there in 26:32 with the 4. Up next, South Florida native and the face of American show jumping for, of course, years, Margie Engel, coming to us here aboard Cessna M. Margie Engel and the Virginia Bartholomew entry. Virginia based out of Big Fork, Montana. Cessna M, the 9-year-old chestnut Belgian gelding by check-in. Margie was a top 3 ribbon winner many times during the Traverse City Spring Series here in Michigan. She had ribbons on both Cessna M and Royce. Left to go and be a part of the Global Champions Tour in Stockholm, Paris, and Noke. In fact, had a win aboard Dicus there and Noke before coming back. And over the last couple of weeks has again been in the ribbons on Royce Cessna M and Aston Dezetis. Of course, we know her as a team rider in the Olympic and World Equestrian Games. 17 starts at the World Cup Finals. And in 2 outings of the Pan Am Games, never missing a podium placement. Gold, silver for the team, bronze as an individual in 2003. Good mount there in Cessna M as she comes around for a tight turn to the number 11 obstacle and keeps it clear. Finishes up in 25.87 to earn herself right now 13th in the ranking. Home stretch, if you will, now that we've just got 9 more to go, and Nico Ritter out of Wellington, Florida is among them. He's riding a Signe Osby entry, Kidamo 10. And Kidamo 10 is a 10-year-old bay Holsteiner gelding by Kidam de Revel. Winner aboard this one early this season at the Ridge Tour, which takes place in Wellington, Florida during the Winter Equestrian Festival there. He's also topped the card in the Open Jumpers in Tryon, North Carolina. Here in Traverse City, he's been a couple times in the top 2 in the meter 30 and meter 35 ranks. Still looking for a big finish in one of our feature classes here. Looks like he's also just giving his horse some experience in the ring here before he tips his hat and retires from the round. Another entry coming in now for Katie Dynan. She's actually making her way down the ramp aboard Elia Blue, a 9-year-old chestnut Holsteiner mare by VDL Zirocco Blue. Previously shown to wins in young horse classes at Le Mans under rider Robert Olivier. Also earned feature ribbons in Saint-Tropez and other placings in France and Qatar before Katie took on the mount early this season. Placed in national classes during the first week of our Great Lakes Equestrian Festival, and they're just stepping up into the international ranks here in Traverse City. Of course, Katie Dynan with lots of feature victories throughout Europe and the U.S. She's been a top contestant at Harrisburg and Toronto on the indoor tour. Of course, a Global Champions Tour stop winner in Miami, Florida a couple of years back. Some of her victories in Europe have come in Belgium, the Netherlands, Switzerland, France, Italy, Austria, Slovakia, and the list goes on. She was a 4-time World Cup finalist, straight years from 2013 to 2016, and has been on a number of winning Nations Cup teams on behalf of the U.S. Elia Blue, her second ride in the class here today. And if you remember earlier on, she led the pack with Athos DL in 23.86, overtaken since then by Ashley Vogel and Alberto Sanchez Cozar, who currently hold first and second. So we'll see whether or not she's got designs on retaking that lead. And as I say that, of course, she's going to be out of contention for a new lead because she has pulled a rail in the first phase. So working on 4 right now as Katie and Elia Blue. And there's the bell signaling the 4-fault effort in 46.11 over that first course. Again, Brian Lookable here with you as we continue our broadcast on Clip My Horse TV, live from Traverse City, Michigan. This is our Great Lakes Equestrian Festival Week 3. So we're about halfway through the summer tour, but it's just the second week of Major League show jumping competition. 2- and 5-star events on display here this week. Namely, right now, the $5,000 Groove Family Large Tour. And at this point, we've got a total of 7 left to go, including a Nicholas Pizarro ride. He's been doing quite well with us here over the last couple of weeks. Nicholas Pizarro, a top 3 finisher last week in our Honor Hill Grand Prix. And also competing on a part of the teams that showed last week in the Major League Show Jumping Tour team debut. He was a part of the All-Mexico outing there last week for Team Otomi. Of course, named after that location there in Mexico, his home country. Nicholas Pizarro, of course, well known for Mexico as a rider in feature events for the team. Competing, of course, at the Olympic World Equestrian Games as well as Central American and Caribbean Games today. He's going to finish up the initial phase with 4 faults in a time of 44.01. We've got a U.S. leader and another U.S. challenger coming in. After this, she's our last U.S. rider. We'll have riders for Great Britain, Mexico, Brazil, and Canada. So we'll just have to wait to see whether or not the U.S. has what it takes to hear their anthem during the top 3 ceremony here in our large tour event. Grace Debney again. Actually, I'm sorry, it's Haley Banyas coming up next here out of Lake Forest, Illinois. She's through the arch in just a moment here in our Turtle Creek Casino and Hotel International Ring. Six left to go. Top time right now, 22:88. We've seen a couple of others faster than that, but they came with knockdown penalties, most of them at the end of the course. So riders who were on their way to the finish line decided to turn on the heat and unfortunately had that last fence down to keep them out of contention for the top spot. But we do know faster times are available. Winner in Grand Prix in Lamplight near her base in Chicago just a few weeks back was Haley Banyas. She did that in the Spring Spectacular Grand Prix there, a $25,000 national class with this very mount, Farrah Flies. Farrah Flies is the 9-year-old gray mare, the Westphalian by Capistrano, and again out of her Lake Forest, Illinois base. It's also one of the horses she shows to high amateur top ribbons throughout the Winter Equestrian Festival and on into our Great Lakes Equestrian Festival as well. But again, her biggest finish this year coming at that $25,000 Grand Prix in Chicago. Round she goes with no fault so far, with just one jump left in the first phase, going up against some big-name competitors here in our Groove Family Large Tour class. She's penalty-free and into that second phase, but she's going to tip her hat, deciding to compete no further today. Successful in getting through the round, she'll save her jumps for later on. Grace Debney of Great Britain coming up, representative of Great Britain, though of course she is based in Hampton, Massachusetts. A rider who has competed to junior top honors earlier this season. Just recently, top of the junior hunter divisions in the Brandywine Series, where the East Coast Junior Finals took place just 2 weeks back. But of course, right now here competing aboard Bohème de la Roque. Grace Debney for Temple Equestrian LLC. This Celle Francais mare is 10 years of age and by Canaan. See if one of our junior competitors can face the heat and come out on top. The trouble parts of the course are clear so far. And she's making short work of the initial phase here. Staying revved up to go into phase 2. And she'll get there. Target time in this second phase, 22:88. Lucy in the Sky and Ashley Vogel leading the way. She's wasting no time coming around the bend to number 11. Should be well ahead of the pace there. Remember, up to now I've said 17 seconds was what she needed to be on target. But she's well ahead of that in 15 and gets to the finish line in 21:58 to take over the lead. No faults, and that is the quickest in the double clear column. Nice job by Grace Debney. Great Britain now stands to hear their anthem played during our awards. 21:58, the new target. Claudia Michelle Rodriguez comes up next out of Lomas de Chapultepec aboard her own Nelson 212. Again, rider for Mexico. Nelson 212 is the mount here. A 15-year-old bay Holsteiner gelding. Sired by Necton. Showing this one through the course of the last 2 seasons. This year she has had top ribbons in San Miguel de Allende in several 2-star events, the meter 40 and meter 45 height there. Into the winning round ribbons in Balvanera as well. And she's another victim of 4A coming down, so 4 faults so far as she approaches the last fence and does so in 45 and change. The bell rings there as she has that first phase 4 fault result. So she'll make her exit from the ring. And we've got just 3 left to go. Next to go will be a Rodrigo Lambre ride. Rodrigo of Brazil. Riding an entry owned by Mario Oñate, known as Diabler, number 2481. Hopefully we'll be seeing him come through here in just a moment. Total of 18 entries have gotten through this course, designed again by Olaf Peterson Jr. without penalty. Top of the list right now, Grace Debney, Ashley Vogel, Alberto Sanchez Cozar. They're the ones who will stand for the awards representing Great Britain, the USA, and Mexico so far. Just 2 rounds back, we saw the pace increase to 21:58. So that was about 3/4 of a second faster than the previous leader. Looks like we had just a little bit of a delay here with our next one hopefully coming down the ramp in just a moment. Remaining riders include Rodrigo Lambre for Brazil, Lauren Esdell, and Eric Crewitt of Canada. One thing about this international ring at the Great Lakes Equestrian Festival here in Traverse City, it is a bit of a hike. It's a downhill trip and not really that long, but there's a little bit of a distance between the actual in-gate booth where the very capable A.J. Holmes handles his business and keeps things in order, and the actual Traverse City Horse Show's arch where the riders come through. And at times, there may be just a tad bit of miscommunication there, but it looks like A.J. is sending down Rodrigo Lambre. Again, Rodrigo here with the first of our 3 remaining entries, a team gold medalist at the Pan Am outing in Lima, Peru, 2 years back on behalf of Brazil. Along with that team gold on behalf of Brazil, he also, of course, was a part of the team format debut here last week, riding for the Blazing Sevens and making it into the medal match there. Looking forward to seeing him back in this week's team competition as well. And if you didn't tune in, folks, you got to make sure to do so because it was very exciting. The format keeps things quick, keeps you on the edge of your seat. Just 1 round with all team members in sort of Nations Cup format. The entire team does not go on to the first jump off, just the 2 chosen riders. And then the last round is just 1 rider jumping off for the medals. So it's very exciting, very easy to follow. They've even made adjustments to the scoring format where it concerns eliminations. And so as we tune in, you'll find out more about that, but we hope you'll be a part of it. Rodrigo's team finishing just off the podium there last week, but maybe another chance to get in this week. And he's on his way to a clear today with Diabler. His 13-year-old Royal Dutch Warmblood mount by Berlin will carry him through to a penalty-free effort in 27.03. 2 more riders for Canada, and we'll call it a wrap here in our Groove Family Large Tour class. One of them is Lauren Esdale with Viendios d'Avril. Pauline Esdale entry out of Seagrave, Ontario, Canada, number 2572. Viendios d'Avril is a 12-year-old Grey Cell Francais gelding by Diamant de Saint-Marie. Down at the first fence. That's got to shake you up a bit here. This rider has had a top 7 placing in our 2-star events last week, so we know they're capable of getting into those ribbons today. Not the start they wanted, of course, but as long as they can get through this class, completing the initial phase, they will have at least accomplished qualifying for later events. They've got another rail down there at 4B, and they'll take it slow and easy to get themselves to the finish line here. And they'll finish up with 8 in the first phase, 8 faults. One more to go, folks. The last one coming up. It's Great Britain in the lead, Canada to challenge, with the final entry now being Eric Crowit. His number for scoring today, 14-12. Eric listed out of Lexington, Kentucky, still in his junior days, competing at the age of 16. His ride, Cactus de Cosnier, 9-year-old Gray Cell Francais gelding by Paddock Duplessis. Wellington top 3 finisher in a couple of under 25 classes so far this season. Eric Crowit, 3 years back on the gold medal team for Canada at the North American Junior Young Rider Championships. So he's a rider with a lot of promise, still young in age at 16 years old, and again coming out of the junior ranks. Last to go in our 2-star large tour class, brought to us by the Groove family, one of many sponsors who make our Great Lakes Equestrian Festival, Traverse City Horse Show Series a reality. Collective thanks to all of those supporters and to you who are listening in. Down at the A element there. That's been the bogey combination all day long in this class. Coming around to the final 2 jumps to bring this to a close with just 4 faults. But at least navigating over the course and qualifying as a result of that. 4 faults in a time of 48.34. And the competition is complete here in our Groove Family Large Tour class. What remains is the top 3 presentations. Let's take a quick look at how they'll shake out here today. And we have Grace Debney at the front of the pack, rider for Great Britain in a 21:58 time. A top-level junior rider, as evidenced by recent wins there in Devon, Pennsylvania at the Brandywine Series. Ashley Vogel, certainly a top-level amateur rider who has also been doing quite nicely in the international classes. A large tour winner here last week. She's going to be a runner-up with Lucy in the Sky here during our Great Lakes Equestrian Festival Week 3. And in third place for Mexico, Alberto Sanchez Cozar and Abril Ilcha Z. Their 23:06 time puts them into third. So those are your top 3. Athos Dell and Katie Dinan, who are the early front runners and only were overcome late in the class, will be 4th. We'll have Catherine Strauss and Coach 5th, Ellie Yeager and Iceman Demuse 6th. Sean Cassidy's Talentia Z 7th, Kara Racer Carey and Faberliz 8th. Lauren Huff and Italy HDH 9th, Amazing and Dominic Gibbs 10th. Jewel LVP and Teddy Pritzker 11th, and rounding out the top 12 here today, Kyla McClogy in her Great Lakes debut with Hurry Up B. Once again, finishing out in 12th place. Rounding out competition, getting ready to present the top 3 awards. Ribbon ceremonies, of course, include the national anthem. And you're going to be hearing God Save the Queen here shortly as our rider from Great Britain, once again, Grace Debney, has netted the victory on Thursday afternoon. So stay tuned for Mr. Andrew Pollard, our arena announcer. He'll take you through those presentations, and we hope you're going to be coming back to our Clip My Horse TV broadcast because we'll have a lot more action-packed show jumping coming to you from Traverse City, Michigan.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the award winners, led in by the victorious rider. It is Grace Debney, Bohème de la Roque. The runner-up position to the USA's Ashley Vogel and Lucy in the Sky. And third place for Alberto Sanchez Cuzar, represented here by countrymate Claudia Rodriguez from Mexico. Well, before the formalities of presentation, ladies and gentlemen, let's please ask you to stand and remove cover for the national anthem of the winning rider, the national anthem of Great Britain. Well, thank you all very, very much indeed. We're delighted to welcome Dean and Wendy Grew. Thank you so much for your support here at the Major League Show Jumping. Very much part of that integral part of the Great Lakes Equestrian Festival. Let's go to those official photographs, and it is in third place, represented by Claudia Rodriguez for Alberto Sanchez Cuzar for Mexico, Abril Hilchezed. Well, Dean and Wendy Grew offering their congratulations to the third place finisher. The runner-up, a second place finish, a big winner last week, second today, Ashley Vogel, Lucy in the Sky. Ashley Vogel in second, Lucy in the Sky. She was just pipped, though, by the young talent from Great Britain. Grace Debney, the winner, Bohème de la Roque. Well, thank you all very, very much indeed. And again, a huge thank you to Dean and Wendy Grew. We'll send her away for that victory gallop. It is the winning horse and rider combination. Grace Debney, Bohème de la Roque. Congratulations, Grace. Congratulations, Ashley. And also Alberto Sanchez Cazar rounding out the top 3. Thanks once again, Dean and Wendy Grew and the Grew family for their support of the opening international class. A good class it was too. We'll continue with the international flavour, and it is going to be a 4:15 start for the $2,000 Caladay Small Tour. Around 10 starters in that one, and 4:15 the start time.
was mine.